Tēnā tātou, kua huihui mai nei tēnei rā, nau mai haere mai, ki tēnei huihuinga, strategy and policy, te kōmiti whakahaere o tērā kaupapa. Hoi no, kua au tēnei, e mihi atu nei ki a koutou, kua tatu mai nei. Me te whakaaro nui ki a rātou kua wehe atu ki te pō, te hoaranga tira o tō tātou nei tungane a Henare, a Pam, ko ia tērā, kua wehe atu rā i tēnei wiki tonu, nō reira e whakaaro nui ana ki a rātou, te whānau pani, e tangi ana i te wehenga atu o Fire Pam, me te aroha nui ki a Henare i tēnei wā nui te pauri. So we just acknowledge Pam's passing and extend our aroha and our thoughts to Henare. Henare, if you're watching, tēnā koe hoa. Yeah, but welcome everyone. Rātou te hunga mate ki a rātou, tātou te hungora ki a tātou, nau mai haere mai. So welcome everyone to our strategy and policy meeting. We're gonna start with our tūtira mai ngā iwi waiata, and then we will commence with our business. So kia tū tātou. Everyone knows the action. So just a reminder to our live audience, well, reminder to all of us actually that we have a live stream going, and to the live audience that our councillors and our committee members will be using the iPads, just so that you know that that's what's happening. All the agendas and papers are online. Ka pai? So we have apologies from councillors Oli and Sholem. Any other apologies? Councillor, well, yeah, and leave from councillors Lawson and O'Keefe. So get a mover. Thank you, Your Worship. Seconded by Sophie. All those in favour, ki mai ai. Aye. Any against? Carried. Just a reminder to the committee that if there are conflicts of interest, just to raise those now or at the time of the agenda item. Ka pai? So, we have the minutes from our last Strategy and Policy Committee meeting held on the 18th of June. Moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Dixon. All those in favour, ki mai ai. Any against? Carried. Ka pai. So we're going to head down to item 4. I know there will be a lot of interest in this particular item, especially from our live streaming audience and also those that are in the chamber today. So I'm going to hand this over to Dean. Dean's going to give a presentation, and then we will take questions and with a view to getting to a decision around Splash Planet for this season. So Dean, te koe.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So in regards to the paper, I'll take the paper as read, but what I'd like to do is just to go through, I guess, our sort of current situation where sort of New Zealand is in regards to the COVID-19 alert levels. So as of 1 o'clock this afternoon, there are currently 120 active cases in the country, and two, as of yesterday, sort of 2 additional imported cases and 2 cases that are linked to the subcluster in Mount Roskill. So Auckland's still currently in a alert level 2.5, and the rest of New Zealand's alert level 2, and will be until at least 11:59 p.m. on the 16th of September. So as an organisation, we're currently monitoring the situation and responding to sort of any changes. But I think that in regards to sort of where we are as a sort of national context, it does sort of link in quite nicely with the paper that presented to the committee today. As stated, in regards to the paper, I'll take as read, but I would like to touch on the options, and the options have been sort of pulled together as a result of the previous workshop. The 2 options that we're seeking a recommendation from the committee today, the first one is around either not opening Splash Planet at all, due to the current risk situation with COVID-19. And the second option is we continue planning under the assumption that we'll be entering into alert level 1 and will be in alert level 1 for the remainder of the season, or able to respond if we go back into alert level 2. So those are the 2 options that we're seeking a recommendation on today. As part of the presentation, I've put together a couple of slides based on some questions that were raised at the previous workshop. One of the questions that were raised was around what is our overall expenditure to keep Splash Planet running on a sort of a year-round basis, and what does it look like at the off-peak. So the first slide I've got up there is around a month-by-month breakdown, and what it demonstrates is the red bars show the current expenditure, and so on average, between sort of July up to around October, it's between 150 and 170 to run Splash, and likewise from May through to June the following season. And in between that, obviously the expenditure goes up and aligned with the revenue that kicks in around November, and is generally sort of picked up by the end of April. The green line denotes the attendance rate over that period of time, which tracks against the revenue. In regards to the expenditure breakdown, I've just given you an example of January. So you'll see there that so salaries, wages, temporary staff, advertising, ACC and superannuation make up a large sort of percentage of the outgoing expenditure. The other expenditure that sits in there is expenditure that's normally covered throughout the season in any case, especially around sort of maintenance and whatnot. The service and accommodation costs, if we were to not open under alert level 2, there would be a slight reduction in that percentage, but not enough to sort of impact on the overall sort of expenditure going out. So this particular graph shows the on a good season, and it's reflected on the 2019-2020 season. Bearing in mind with that particular season, we did end the season a few weeks earlier than anticipated due to COVID-19. So we probably anticipated a little bit more revenue coming in on the back of that. But you'll show there that the revenue sort of kicks in around November and then tracks through and covers off the expenditure. This particular graph gives you an example of what would happen if we were to close Splash Planet over the January period under alert level 2. And you'll note there that there is a huge reduction in revenue over that period of time. That's on the pretense that we would reopen at the end of January and continue trading through until our anticipated closure date, which would be Easter. And again, just another example of the impact that January would have. So this is trading right through till February, and then going into alert level 2 and having to close. So you'll see there that obviously the revenue's not impacted as much as January. So those are the, to give you a sort of bit of a flavour as to some of the scenarios and examples we could be facing leading into the summer season with the facility. So I'll sort of open the floor to any questions.
Sandra?
Through you, Chair, I'll start with some questions. First and foremost, under the considerations and the options, we haven't got an option there that identifies what would happen if we go between, say, one and a half. So understanding what is coming with the announcements from the government, how will we manage if we haven't got a consideration? And if 1.5 might be about tracking and tracing and social distancing and numbers. So it's very hard for us to first and foremost make a decision on these recommendations without that consideration. Have you thought about the impacts of a change?
We have thought about an impact, and we've seen changes right from when we went down to alert level 2 after the first lockdown. At that stage, the numbers on gatherings and the restrictions on gatherings were sitting at 500 for a public event facility, and that's changed again, going to this new iteration of the lockdown. It's sitting at 100 within a defined area within a facility. So, bearing in mind there's probably a whole lot of scenarios that we don't know at this stage and a huge level of uncertainty around where we're going with COVID and the alert levels. So it was probably hard to sort of map out what the future levels would look like. We've seen with Auckland, obviously, it's gone down to a 2.5 and still a huge restriction on the numbers of gatherings. And we've seen recently with the sub-cluster at the Mount Roskill Evangelistic Church, that's again as a result of a large number of people gathering, and as a result of that we've had a further outbreak as part of that cluster. So at what's the next date for the government announcement? So the dates will change at least up until the 16th of September, but that's on a Wednesday, so we're anticipating it'll be 48 hours notice before they make another announcement as to whether they extend it or whether there's a new form of alert levels coming in, or a hybrid model of alert levels coming in.
Thank you. And a further question through you, Chair. How many people do we employ at Splash Planet every season, first and foremost?
I'll pass that on to Perrin.
85, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, if we were to continue to employ 85 people, does the staff see opportunity of redeployment to other parts of our organisation, such as our beaches as lifeguards, our pools, our facilities, and those 85 people are employed and redeployed into different parts of our business?
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly the conversation that we've had going into this from a planning perspective is that we would be looking to advertise and employ that gives ourselves the maximum flexibility to redeploy the staff in the event that there was a change in levels and Splash couldn't operate.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Further to that, we have looked at the wording around the employment agreements to cater for redeployment of staff and looking at options. If we were to go into level 2, how to best utilise the skilled staff that we'll be taking on.
Good. Simon, Kevin.
Thanks, David. These are really uncertain times, as you pointed out. And I just wondered what flexibility there is. If we give the Chief Executive authority to make these decisions, what input might we have, or should we provide some indicators at this meeting as a guideline as to what decisions he should make under what circumstances? I mean, what happens if we go to level 1, we open it up, and 3 weeks later we go back to level 2 and have to shut it down? I mean, I just can't see for sure where we're going to be heading as we go along this road.
Through you, Mr Chair, and I think that's the very governance conversation that we're having with you as our elected representatives, is this is, as you say, a very uncertain time. We're looking for some direction, you know, with current state, what assumptions we should make, but looking to point out the range of risks that if we do open and there's a change in levels, because at one end of the spectrum we could end up having the very best splash panic season in our history if we get a whole season at level 1. Equally, we could have quite a big financial impact if we went into level 2 or level 3 for any extended period of time. So that is the direction that we're looking for from you as our elected representatives in order to plan.
My intuition is that the guideline we should give is that, if possible, we should open. Does that make sense?
Thanks, Simon. Kevin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just ask a question through you to Perrin, if that's okay. So, Perrin, if there's one option contains absolute certainty, and that's to close down full stop, black and white. If that option was chosen, could you tell me how you would use that year to improve, add new attractions, maintenance? Would it be of value to you, or would you just feel you had to keep in a holding pattern for 12 months?
Yes and no. There is some stuff that we could do, but there's not a whole. We don't plan to even be closed, even though we've been, the winter. We'd never really planned to do anything during the summer because we're open. We could take that direction, but again, that's more about us coming back to you and asking for direction on that as well. So the only other point I'd make around that question, Councillor Watkins, was the economic impact possibly to the region if we weren't open would be quite significant. I think the numbers showed 25 million Splash Planet directly or indirectly brings into the region. So that would be the only other thing around that question that you asked. Hopefully it answered your question.
Just going to get a bit of clarification on that question that you asked, Kevin, because there's probably a separate budget decision and process that would have to apply. But breaking.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, if you're going to undertake bespoke investments or capital works into Splash Planet that aren't currently in your annual plan or long-term plan, those decisions would have to be worked through council as unbudgeted decisions.
Got any? You're right there, Kev? You're right with that answer?
No, I'm fine.
You're right? Okay. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just interested if there, what other scenarios? It seems to me that it's cold and hard. It's either that it's we make a decision to look to open it or to keep it closed. And when you look at the month-by-month breakdown, it really is the December and Januaries that are the profitable months, and April for some reason. I'm not too sure, that's sort of heading into the cooler months, but that also had a profit. So I'm just looking at those and going, well, other scenarios, we've got November, there is it's loss generating. So, a further deferment, or is that the right word? I'm not too sure, of the decision, really. I think backing up what the Chief Executive said, we could have our biggest bumper season, which not only is benefit to us as the operator of the facility, but it also pushes a lot of confidence out into, one, the general economy, but also to the other tourism operators and accommodation providers and stuff. And I know the stats, we look at stats and maybe that more more locals utilise it than out-of-towners, and that has possibly been the case, but going forward with, and we saw it when we came out of level 4 lockdown, level 3, New Zealanders went all over the place, and if we've got a really fantastic marketing campaign, then you know, we could actually have the best season ever. So I've got that in my mind and going, you know, is there a way, you know, that we should be looking to delay a decision, at least until even next week? That decision's made on Monday, and then, so we're told on Monday, and we've got 48 hours to prepare. We've also got a council meeting on the 15th, which falls in between those two dates. So, yeah, I'm trying to bide time, to be honest.
So, yeah, just to just to add to Councillor Harvey's comments, I mean, it's the 10th of September today. Why is it imperative that we make this decision today? So.
Oh, look, I think that, you know, part of this is direction, but through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of, yes, we will have more certainty on Monday than we have today. We do have council meetings next week, but yeah, and I guess we're going to have the same conversation in a week's time if on Monday it's, you know, it's level 2 or level 1.5 and 100 people gathering. But there's no reason other than operationally we will start to get to a window where, in terms of obviously advertising, recruiting, training, health and safety, so it's just knock on. I don't think a week in terms of getting some more certainty on a Monday. I mean, I'll ask Perrin to comment, but this is about because we're currently working towards still a target opening date in November. 16th of November, so I guess it's just what is the operational implications of another week.
So yeah, from my point of view, operationally, we're already a week and a half behind. We usually start advertising for our seasonal staff on the 1st of September. So if we keep on pushing it out, it's going to make it really hard for us to do that properly with the training, health and safety, all that kind of thing. Another point would be that we could actually still do that and make a decision whether we, you know, advertise and do a bit of recruitment and still make a decision whether we send, you know, accept those applicants for employment later. But there's some stuff that we really need to, and again, your question around the opening date. So we're currently sort of advertised that we're opening on the 16th of November. That's based around Ngāti Karanunu AGM and Sports Day, and we can't have that as our first weekend. We need that soft opening and that training period and that time with the staff to ensure that we're all ready to rock by the time. So we actually open our dates of opening around that, and so we always do that 2 weeks beforehand. I have got a meeting with Ngāti Karanunu Tarangi coming up next week that I haven't that we're going to talk about those issues, because obviously they're wanting to plan as well. But yeah, that's some of the operational stuff behind why we're here today, I think, to get a little bit more of a steer on what's happening.
So the question also was around, you said 85 staff.
Yep.
But that must be staggered. You know, if you are targeting or you have students that are coming back from university, they don't come back then, or you 85 from the 16th of November?
Pretty much.
Through Mr. Chair, I just suggest you receive some advice from our HR specialists on whether we can advertise for positions without some certainty around our intention to open.
We could advertise saying we're hoping to open, but obviously this will depend on alert levels, and if we are able to open, we're looking for staff. My concern with doing that is a number of people may well think, right, they're opening and book to come, and then ultimately we don't. But that is a path we could take.
So there are some fishhooks in doing that, but you know, it could be done. So anyway, we'll carry on with our, Damon, you okay with it? Yep. Okay, we've got Councillor Dixon and then Tanya.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions here. The first one is, this is the 10th of September, and then we've just heard it's the 16th of November when you expect to open. What's stopping us from getting this project to be shovel-ready, as the current terminology is, ready to go on the 16th of November? That's the first question. The second question is, could the staff who are employed be multitasked and be flexible so they could move to other jobs? And the third question, I'm sensing a bit of negativity here. Do you want it to open or not?
Oh, through you, Mr. Chair, I'll assume the third question is a question for your colleagues.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
The officers have been very clear that we're planning and working to open. We are seeking direction from you as our elected representatives to the level of risk in relation to your first 2 questions. I think, again, we've tried to outline that we are working on a set of planning assumptions towards a November opening, but that's starting to get to the point where we need some direction because we need to advertise. And your second question, Councillor?
The second question was, along the lines, what would be the total cost if COVID came mid-term and it actually collapsed around us? What would be the total cost to council?
Well, I guess that was the purpose of Dean's slides. And so this is the challenge that we're all grappling with around uncertainty. So we might have some more certainty on Monday around levels. That doesn't guarantee that come November or December that we'll still be what the level could be next week. So it is a risk-based decision. But I think on the modelling that we've done is you could end up having a great season and make hundreds of thousands of dollars more. But if you were in level 2 or level 3 lockdown over the course of January, you could lose the best part of hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of revenue relative to cost. So I know this is difficult, but as where we're trying to seek a bit of direction on, one, should we be open? What's the kind of risk appetite? Trying to be as clear as we can around these different factors that we're dealing with.
Yeah, I just, through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask in relation to opening, and we know that it's moving at the moment, moving feast in relation to what's going to happen. What are the projections around increased costs and logistical costs, hygiene costs, if it does open? Because I noted it's in the report. I wasn't at the workshop, so that's why I thought I'd ask, because I didn't see it on the graphs.
With the workshop, we tried to explain that under some of the different levels, there would be the need to increase our cleaning, increase PPE and all that kind of expenditure. It's reasonably significant, and it would also mean that that's why we've come with the whole, I think, level 2 is not really an option of being open. Level 1 would just mean we'd increase our cleaning. And I think there would be contact tracing, and I think that you'd probably still do that through the QR code. So I think if we were in level 1, depending and again on the level 1 requirements, it wouldn't be hugely significant. But again, that's based on the level 1 requirements at the moment.
And just further to that, we've heard about staffing levels and a team of 85 being in there, but also has modelling been done around reducing hours, or are they going to be standard hours?
At the moment, through you, Mr. Chair, at the moment, the hours are going to be the same.
Thank you.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, if we were to be in alert level 2 and still try to continue to trade, it'd be very sort of capped in regards to sort of the average ticket price or entry price versus the income we'd get from that. But there'd still be an expenditure, and based on sort of the 2018-2019 season, that worked out to on average around 12,600 a day on expenditure just to keep the facility running.
Thank you.
So I've got Mayor Hazelhurst and Councillor Travis.
Are our pool attendants wearing PPE gear at the moment in level 2?
Through you, Mr Chair, no, we are doing increased cleaning at the facilities. There is a section of our, we have contact tracing as they come in. We have to limit the numbers to 100, and also we're not able to do in the pool lessons because that would mean our staff would be in contact with the kids. So we're currently only running lessons that involve the instructor on the side of the pool.
And just a further question, I'm just interested in some modelling around what, you know, it's very difficult for us to give you a direction today about the knowledge that is coming. And you know, it's not just us. Everybody in New Zealand is doing this at the moment in some form. We've still got our pools going. I heard of a theatre yesterday that is actually allowing 100 people on each floor to safely stay and work because they're entering from a different area and using different toilets. So, for example, our opera house will have 100 on the ground floor and 100 on the circle because we've got different toilets. Now, things like this are changing by the day. Now, Central Hawke's Bay, we've got a big concert and allowing that to happen and occur as well. So we need to be really flexible here, and this can't be a hard and fast decision in my view today, because there are ways in which we need. My greatest concern is that we're not employing 85 people this year, and that those people are going to be without employment, and this is a huge concern to me. And that's why I want to exhaust every possible opportunity. I want modelling and scenarios on how you can stagger a day of 100 if it is at level 2. I want to see how you can have people coming in for 2 hours and going out. And then if it's up to 500, how you manage 500. I want to see those modelling because I don't think we've exhausted every option here. We're in a 100-year episode and we have to think differently. We have to think outside the square and we have to think smartly and we have to come up with different ways than yes or no, right or wrong. Because there's too many factors for our community at risk here. Yes, there's the tourism. Yes, there's the jobs. Yes, there's our own people to be employed. And yes, there's a health and safety risk. And we've got to look at those across all of those areas. And we can't look at them in isolation. And there's some missing information in this report for me.
Thank you, Bishop. I've got, do you want to, no? You want to respond to that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So we have looked at scenarios which we talked through at the workshop around how Splash Planet could operate if it was under alert level 2. The biggest, if you call it an issue, or it's the biggest problem with Splash Planet is that the central attraction is the water park. And then in order to try and cater for defined groups, so defined groups of 100 people within the park itself, and then rotate those people around. So the guidelines at this stage are quite clear that those groups of 100 cannot mix. So you'd have to have them separated. And by doing that, you then have to start cordoning off areas within the park itself. And then you start looking at amenities within the park, including sort of restaurants and that sort of thing as well. So it's not rolling it out, and we will look at scenarios further to that. But logistically, we have gone through and tried to sort of run through some scenarios as to how we could get the park operating, and even trying to create defined areas. It'd be very hard to get more than 300 people in the park at any one time if we were to create these defined areas and ensuring there's a metre distance between the people. So, but point taken, and we will explore those options that you've mentioned.
Councillor Redstone.
Thank you. Just my question is obviously about the hold for 4 days for a start. We've only got 4 days until we have more information, probably. Can we delay the opening of the park for 2 weeks, for instance, just to make things easier on Kieran and the people doing the training, and recruiting? That's one question. The other question is, are there any opportunities to write COVID into the employment contracts? I know that sounds harsh, but I have friends who employ part-time casual staff only, and they're on call. So I'm just wondering if those options are available so that we can at least offer some employment, but not cost us huge amounts of money if we can't.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, about delaying the opening. We did discuss that briefly again at the workshop and how that would affect operationally. We already do have bookings, and like I've said, one of the first major bookings is Ngāti Kaununu AGM on the 28th of November, which brings about 4,000 people to Splash Planet, and a bunch of them are from out of the bay. So while it is again a possibility at the moment, operationally we could do it, but it would affect quite a number of our bookings already. But that's, and I think the second one referred to Bronwyn.
We might get staff to sidle up next to Councillor Corbyn, just to use that mic, because we are live streaming and you know, people want to hear what the comments are. Kapai, thanks, Bronwyn.
Through you, Chair. We have explored the option of various steps we could take, such that if we go ahead and employ staff and then alert levels move to 2, 3 or 4, whether we could then get into a position where we can make some remuneration savings. At alert level 3 and 4, we could look to use the force majeure clause. However, there would still need to be a process around consulting with staff and paying notice. By the time we worked through that, we may then be back down levels, and the other thing to consider is that if we then go back down levels during the normal opening season, it would be expected that we would be open fairly quickly. So if we've just off-boarded all our staff, we then would have another 6 to 8 week lead-in to get staff back on again. In terms of not paying staff, if they agreed to that, we could progress with it. However, they then may look for other work and then again not be available when we hopefully were able to open. I also would say that I'm not sure that it's the right thing to do, take people on for work and then try and get to a situation where we're not paying them, but that's not a legal argument, that's more a good employer one. And the fourth thing that I'll mention is with zero contract legislation, 0 hours legislation I should say, we can't just require people to be available when we want them without compensating them for that. And this is by no means a situation where casual employment would be appropriate. You know, you couldn't say this is casual because if we're open, it's part-time hours on an ongoing basis, not casual.
Thanks, Bronwyn. So we've got Councillor Travers, Harvey and Nixon, and then I'm going to ask John Nicol, who's been invited. He's the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. I've invited him along. I want him to give us some, he's not in the decision table, but in terms of from an audit and risk point of view, to give us some comment in terms of what councillors should be thinking about when making this particular decision. So we'll go Travers, Harvey, Nixon, and then we'll go to John, and then Councillor Corbyn after that. Did you get on to? Oh, did you? Oh? Yeah. Oh, well, we'll get to you, Councillor, but Jody.
Thank you. If you force me to make a decision today, then my answer would have to be no, because it is the only logical thing to do, because we're currently in a circumstance that makes opening halfway between impossible or very difficult. within a very short period of time, we are going to be in a situation where there is greater clarity. At the moment, it seems to me the rationale for wanting us to make a decision today is that by doing so enables us to meet traditional timelines that we have always operated. I'd just like to point out that this is not a usual year. This is a year in which all people have to do different things in different ways, according to different imperatives and using different timelines. So I sincerely believe that we need to adjust our thinking as well. Re the employment, I cannot think that the employment issue would be much more complicated than situations I've been in as an employer in the past, employing someone in a maternity leave position, where the letter of appointment says if the child were to die, be stillborn, miscarried, then the contract is null and void. So we could potentially write a contract that says if the government actions preclude opening, then the position is null and void. I mean, that's established in case law. So what I'm asking for is more time, for goodness sake. There must be, in order to make a logical decision, we simply cannot make it today.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. Well said, Councillor Travers. I just want to go back to November, and it has a loss, and then you're saying that you've got a potential commitment, which is Ngāti Kahungunu, and that's on the 28th of November, and November makes a loss. So is it, do we really have to strongly consider that? And again, it's just going back to those scenarios. What's wrong with December 1 or the first weekend of December? It just seems that we haven't, as Councillor Travers says, we're pretty set in that it's sort of business as usual, but we're saying it's not, and yet we haven't got those sort of different scenarios.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Look, the problem has been, I suppose, that we went from level 2 back to level 1, and we were planning for a long period of time, and it went through, quite a significant process through the CE about opening dates and all that process. So we were doing that. That's why we're here today. I mean, there is some operational stuff that we can change, we can do differently. We can do whatever anyone wants in some ways, but I'm putting forward, I suppose, what some of the issues or the reasons why were around that, bearing in mind that we were in a level 1 for quite a significant period of time, and everything was heading in the right track. So operationally, of course, we can open later, and I think that was a discussion we had last week at the workshop about when I think the latest we could think about doing that, and all those different scenarios were discussed during that period. So, of course, that's on the table, and that's why we're here. Does that answer your question, Councillor Harvey? Thank you.
Thank you. So we have Councillor Nixon, then John, Councillor Corbyn, and then Nick. Is that you? I've got Councillor O'Keefe. Who's got his mic? Oh, John's got that mic at the back. Oh, yep, come away. All right.
Okay, I think I'm just about ready to drive a stake in the ground on my opinion. Well, yeah, we're going to have to make a decision. Firstly, to me, this discussion is actually about money, because if it wasn't about money, we'd just employ the 80 people and take the risk that it opens or not. So it's a money issue. Secondly, every tourism operation in the country is going through the same dilemma. Air New Zealand starts up, they shut down. Jetstar started up, they didn't resume again. Everybody's encountering this. These are, as whoever said, Councillor Travers, pinch my thunder again, but these are unparalleled times. The key thing is we can only open in level 1. Under level 2, 3 and 4, we have to shut. And if we go back to any of those levels, we will have to shut again. We can only open in level 1, and we don't even know when that's going to happen. It might happen Monday, or it might not happen for a month. We just don't know. My view is that we should make the decision not to open until level 1 is determined, that it is when we're going to go into it. as far as staff go, in terms of being the moral high ground, because staff are, they're going to be at some risk. But I think in our advertising, we need to have a plan to offer a sort of minimum package if we close down again. It might be a week, it might be a month. I'm not going to specify just how long, to give them some certainty, because I think it's unreasonable. We could have people hire one day and fire the next because we go to another level. I think we've got to take some of that risk ourselves and accept that it might cost us a little bit if we go back to a higher level. If we open under level 1 and it goes again to levels 2, 3 or 4, I think we should then make the decision we will close down for the season if it happens again. So that's my stake in the ground. I'm not sure what John's going to say, might dispute everything I've said, but we want it to open. We all know we want it to open, but we are facing a difficult situation if we don't know whether we can open, or if we open, that we can stay open. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Simon. John.
This one here, Craig? Yep. Oops. Awesome. Kia ora, thank you for the opportunity through you, Chair, to have a quick chat today. I have had a few phone calls with Dean. He ran me through some of the work that he'd done for the workshop, and I just want to give you the assurance that I've got a high degree of confidence in the actual numbers. That's quite important, so we don't have to shoot the message. So the numbers are pretty solid. The decision and discussions around those numbers are where the real challenges are. And I guess I really do envy council, because effectively, no matter what the strategy is, if we wait till level 1 and then 7 days later we go to level 2, and then nobody can guess how that's going to shape out going forward. So I agree with Councillor Travers about, if we do have some kind of a forward lead time, but ultimately you will have to rule off, and you can't keep it open forever. I also agree with that if it does stay open for 150 days, it will probably be a record season. But if it doesn't stay out for 150 days, you've got to be prepared that you will have an exponential financial loss. So it's to me, it really is that simple, because it doesn't matter if it starts and then stops and starts, it'll be anywhere between a $300,000 loss and $1 million loss. So that's what you've got to grapple with. So you're effectively, if you vote to open, you're voting for 150 days of trouble-free motoring. And that's a tough call, and none of us know, and we don't know that level's 1.5 because this game changes every day. But my own personal view is you probably do have a few days grace to wait till early next week, but that can't stay open indefinitely. You're going to, at some stage, you've got to actually rule off, because you've got people's employment contracts. And just finally, if you did employ 85 people, I don't know what you think, Chief Executive, but I'd be stunned if you could deploy those 85 all across the organisation, because maybe 20 you could. But once you sign these folks up, they're kind of signed up for a while, I think. So in summary, if you think it's going to be level 1 for the full period, I think it would be a bumper year if it was. I think people will be travelling. But any yo-yoing in and out of level 1, the loss will be anywhere between likely 200,000 to 300,000 and potentially $1 million. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, John. Did you want to? No? Yeah, okay. All right, Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you. I'd just like to pick up on the last 3 speakers and about the dollars and the potential loss, and recognising that December and January are the most profitable months. So if we didn't open, there's still going to be expense incurred. And I think the monthly difference between not opening, the expense, and the expense of running it in full steam is about $200,000 a month. Would that be right? $200 a month? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I look at this and say, well, December and January are the most profitable months. If we committed to opening December and January and couldn't, there'd be $400,000. And I think that's the question that we've got to answer, really.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sears.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that Geraldine has also stated my position. If the decision needs to be made today, then it would have to be a no. It's easy for us to say that it's our risk. Of course, it's our ratepayers' risk, and $1 million to them that we have gone ahead with to provide what we would hope would be a wonderful season of swimming and fun for our people and for our tourists. I think, you know, a far too big a risk actually for our community in this time. As much as I hate to be the person that says no, because we all want, thank you Malcolm, of course I want to open Splash Planet, but it's crazy to think that we would open on the 16th of November and possibly have a level one run of 150 days. I think that's so very unlikely. So if it is not possible to stretch the time, I agree with Councillor Harvey. If we can't see a way of stretching out and saying let's wait, possibly even open mid-December when things have changed, if that's not a possibility, then it would have to be for me that we close the doors now and protect our ratepayers' money from any further loss on it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you everyone for your comments. I've been listening and probably like all of you leaning one side to the other. I don't think I can make a decision today. I don't think I can make a recommendation, understanding that the next government review is likely to be about the 14th of September. So I'd like to move the recommendations that read that we receive the report, that the committee recommends we reconsider on or about the 14th of September with a view to open if possible. And the committee delegates to the Chief Executive to act on their recommendation. So I've fallen on the side of open if possible.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, we have a council meeting at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. So if that's the, if I was summing up the direction that sort of says broadly level 2 looks hard, we're going to get some direction on Monday. To Mr. Nichols' point, you know, there's probably, with degrees of challenges, a couple of, you know, if you accept that, you know, a December opening and December, January are the big months, there's probably a limited runway now of a couple of weeks. But the next point is seeing what is announced by Cabinet on Monday afternoon, and we seek a direction from you off that on Tuesday morning.
Mr. Chair, could I just tweak the recommendations to include at a decision of council on that date? I think that's the most appropriate time.
So we leave the report to lay on the table until the council meeting next Tuesday.
Thank you, that's the perfect word. Perfect words, perfect process. So therefore the recommendations are simply that, to leave this lying on the table till the next council meeting.
I think we, so just let me get some clarification on process.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd just suggest that we hear from Ms. Evans or Mr. Smith on the, we can leave the paper to lie and be reconvened at the council.
Yes, you can. You've got two choices. You can either leave the report to lie on the table for consideration at the council meeting, or we could defer this committee meeting and reconvene on following the council meeting next Tuesday. So different chair.
I prefer the second course. The only concern I have first is that you're deferring an item from one committee's agenda to another committee. Whereas if we simply adjourn this hearing, this meeting at its conclusion, rather than conclude it, and reconvene while we're all gathered for the council meeting next Tuesday, Baden take his chair and brief the
So just in terms of the, so the paper in its totality will sit. Recommendations well, not the recommendations, the options are still those that will be considered? Okay. Okay, yep. So we have a motion on the table that this strategy and policy meeting be, this item from the agenda, Splash Planet, be adjourned and...
We've still got some more speakers.
I'm fine, I had the same recommendations.
You know,
I just had a very quick comment. I think the thing to remember is if it opens, shuts, opens sort of thing, we're not necessarily committed to $2 million of losses because there will be some revenue so long as it opens. So I think just a word of caution, the risks are not necessarily as great as being, taking all these staff on them and shut for the whole time.
No, and through you, Mr. Chair, I hope that's not the impression you've got from council officers. I think, we know at one end of the spectrum this is a record season through to, depending on levels and opening and closing, just a degree of risk, which goes, and I think quite well summed up from the Chair of Audit and Risk from, if you lost December and, January, you're anything from, a few hundred thousands to a worst case scenario if you couldn't open at all. Of $1 million. So I was just trying to represent an accurate view of the risk, but I take your point.
Through you, Chair, just before you put the motion, I'd really, just in terms of, and I don't, maybe an action, not an extension to the recommendations, but I would like to understand for Tuesday, if we are in level 2, that you have a model that we could have a look at that shows that there won't be any food, people bring their own picnic, that so we don't need 85 people, that we could manage a different way, that you could close the slide because it's very hard to get people social distancing at the slide, and you could open the rest. I just need to fully understand that we've exhausted all ways of our community, and if it's locals only or something like that, that people can. It's a huge area, it's a huge park. There's so many parts of that park, and I just want to make sure that we are really smartly looking at ways that we could still open at level 2 in a different managed way. I put that as an action, please.
Got that noted? Yep, go away. All right, so we've got a motion on the table that we reconvene this part of the agenda item of this meeting until next Tuesday on the 15th of September. After or before? Is it after or before the council? Following the council meeting, okay? Following the council meeting on Tuesday. And then we will reconvene this item of the agenda as per the paper that's been presented. So I've got a mover, Councillor Kerr, you move that, and seconder, Councillor Nixon. I'll put that, all those in favour, give my eye. Any against? Carried. Thank you very much, people. Good discussion, and we'll bring that back on Tuesday. Thanks, staff. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Dean. Thanks, John. Excellent. All right. So, that was item 4. So we've got a presentation here on our housing update, and yep, Craig's going to present that to us. Item number 5. Next, Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through Mr. Chair. Apologies, councillors, my 3 key staff in this space, Mr. Oosterkamp, Mr. Bishop, and Mr. Faulkner have chosen to all be sick today. So, so there's 2 components to this. There's been a lot happening in the housing space over the last few months. There's some business information that we'll brief council on informally after this meeting. The paper before you I'll take as read. It's basically an update on where council is in the housing space. And when I use the term housing space, it's in turn or in respect of council's objectives to facilitate as best we can as local government the supply or suitable supply of quality and safe housing to address all segment demands in the market. I guess the traditional role of council has been the provision of land, whether it's infill or medium density or greenfields land, to allow for the construction of additional housing to meet growth. That's been the traditional space of council, but we've taken, well, this council's been a lead in the country in taking a place-based approach to the addressing our accommodation shortage needs. And you'll see through the paper the various initiatives that council in partnership with the other key organisations in this space, Ministry of Social Development, Ministry of Housing, District Health Board, etc., the actions that are taking place to address those housing demands. I think that's probably all I can really add to this paper. The paper's pretty self-explanatory from that. And as I said, we'll discuss later on offline the more detailed business information about what's happening in this space at the moment. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of very simple questions more around process. The medium density housing, I see there's an intensive residential design guide, and then there's also, if this would work, a Hastings medium long-term housing strategy. I'd appreciate if those could go through the District Development Committee, if that's the appropriate place.
Yeah, so we've got a comprehensive informal briefing coming up after this as the whole council present, and then part of that is that once the whole council's up to speed, I expect there's a lot of policy development work to be done, and I think that'll largely fall into the greater communities and district development subcommittees to work on.
Thank you.
Tanya?
Thank you. Just in relation to, I've got a question around your program control group. One of the, the hat I'm wearing today is obviously through Takutono, and I also wear the hat as the GM for Te Taipinua or Te Pangnui Aorotu. All of our maraes actually are all based in the Hastings District Council. So we would ask that we be included in this because a lot of them are talking papakainga, and I note that we're not on this group, so just an opportunity, a suggestion.
Haere mai.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of land, and I'm speaking about land and variety. Pukitapu, way out in Tangoio, up to Te Haroto, where our maraes are. Also, I know Waihoki have been very active in this space, and so have Motio, and also Kohu Pātaki and Clyde within our scope too. So it'd be good for us to be part of that. So if you can include us, thank you.
Absolutely welcome to join. I mean, it's been about getting the right partners around the table, and as you're aware, the chair of the iwi sits on the governance group, as does the CEO.
He does not speak for us, though.
Tai Whenua, but I guess the point I was going to make, a critical part of the whole approach we're taking to the Hastings Housing Plan is around iwi-led, Māori-led housing solutions. So, look, the membership of this has evolved over time, and welcome on board.
Yeah, thank you. And it's just an opportunity. That's where I'm coming from, strengths-based in relation to quite often we're left out because people don't see that we're in the Hastings District Council boundaries. So thank you.
You'll be surprised how many papakainga are either completed in development or nearly ready to break ground. I think there might be 150 homes, throughout. Oh, yeah, you got the numbers there? Yeah. Yep. So good. Yep. Kawai. Councillor?
I'm just happy to move the recommendation.
Okay. Cool. We've got a mover. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Travers. All those in favour? Ki mai ai? Any against? Carried. Thank you. So, items 6 to 9 or 10 are just really reports from our our subcommittee chairs, and I know we have a couple, well, we have one chair missing, an apology today, so the deputy chair may need to jump into that. So we'll just go, we'll start off with Councillor Lawson's committee.
Yeah, so I'm standing in.
Oh, yeah, you stand, yep, go right.
So,
Put your mic on.
I can yell. And now I've got an echo. Just like most of the other subcommittees, they're all still in draft form, and that draft is easily accessible on the hub for everybody to see where its current status is. There was a workshop held on the 11th of August where that was worked through, and a further one is planned for the 24th of September. We will continue to work on the strategy, but there's also a focus on community plans, which we're all aware of and have indicated that we need to do some work on those to get some consistency and also prioritise the right ones. But also due to changes within the aquatic facilities within the district, that we also look at the aquatic strategy as well. So that is some work. So yeah, that'll be brought back to the subcommittee. The Flaxmere Community Centre Sit-Fit classes received ACC accreditation. I've seen some media around those as well in the last week. And the Youth Employment Program received a further $980,000, which is based on its success over the last 12 months and a number of appointments. A number of people going through the program and then being appointed into the workforce. So there's been some fantastic work there done by our team. Oh, I've lost the photo. And municipal, we obviously had the workshop 2 days ago. And we'll get a better understanding of that and also a decision next week at full council meeting. And also the library staff are currently working with the National Library of New Zealand for external funding to support staffing opportunities and upskilling staff. So there are just some couple of actions, but obviously there is the plan as well to be developed.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey, for that report on the Greater Communities Subcommittee.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much for that report. Can someone just advise me the library's resuming to normal hours? Is that a Tuesday night included? That because we have a landmarks group meets monthly and they would like to know.
Through you, Chair. I haven't got the exact details on me, Your Worship, to answer that question fully, but there is a plan to get the libraries back to their full complement of hours that they're open during the week, with some sort of minor amendments to pick up on other sort of patterns that were happening in the usage of the libraries prior to lockdown. We are at the moment dependent upon getting the National Libraries of New Zealand funding to help support us and get our full complement of staffing up so we can get back to that level. And there's a plan between now and February to get us there.
Is it likely, do we have a time frame in terms of when Sundays and evenings will be open?
That's right. Yeah, so there is actually, thank you, Mr. Chief. There is a report coming to Ops and Monitoring next week, which actually outlines the steps that the staff are taking in that regard and the timing around that.
Alrighty. Are there recommendations for those reports? Okay, just need to move in a second that the committee receives this report from Greater Communities. So I've got verbal update, sorry. Councillor Sears, seconded by Councillor Redstone. All those in favour, keep my eye. Aye. Any against? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Let's move on to item 7. Report on activity from the District Development Subcommittee. And we'll go to the Chair, Councillor Kerr.
Thank you very much. District Development have had 3 workshops rather than any meetings, as we haven't had any specific decision-making requirements. At our last workshop, we were joined by 3 youth councillors, Sam, Keelan and Lewis. They really engaged with the subcommittee. It was great. Asked some good questions, and they were well supported by Councillor Sholem, and can see that they'll add value. They just asked different questions from the councillors. Te Rangiho Gilbert no longer works for Ngāti Hiniuru, so is no longer our Māori partner on the committee, and look forward to seeing that there is a replacement at some time. Our first focus has been on reviewing the strategy document, just like the other committees. We have completed that, and we're about to evaluate the targets and goals associated with each part. In addition, we've investigated the planning framework, so we got some great paperwork, like how does it all fit in together? And we also tried to understand HPUDs in the review process. The other thing the committee investigated was how to safeguard the quality of new builds. So once again, we had a great staff report on that. And if anyone's interested in any of those papers, happy to share them. Some of our items are formally undertaken by joint committees, for example, the Regional Transport Committee, picking up the transport strategies, and the HPUDs review. So it will be important to keep up to date on these work areas and provide input as needed. So next step, really focusing on what our priorities will be. For example, the Regional Industrial Strategy, Housing, CBD. So it's a very brief outline. Thank you. And I do have that in writing if you'd like it sent somewhere. Jackie?
Jackie.
Thank you.
Any questions? No? Can I get a mover and a seconder that we received the District Development Subcommittee report? Moved by Tanya, seconded by Councillor Dixon. All those in favour, keep my eye. Aye. Any against? Gary. Kia ora. Thank you. The District Plan and Bylaws Review Subcommittee. Handed time over to our chair, Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This committee has met once, and the major issue that was laid before us and which has been discussed in a recommendation that went to council revolves around the Class 4 Gaming Act, and it's a contentious issue, but I'm very pleased to say through both my committee and council, unanimous decision on what that recommendation would be, that we would take out for public submission. Those submissions will be heard beginning of December. So I'm very pleased with the process, and particularly the participation of all members of my committee. Tania, you had a great input into that, so thank you very much for that. And as you'll see on the agenda on page 32, the work stream priorities are set out there, which you are all very familiar with. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Well, we have a question here from Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you. Just with the sinking lid policy, and it's clarification really. If machines are lost in a venue in a suburb, is that the suburb they're lost within? For example, if a premise is closed in Havelock North, they're lost in Havelock North. If a premise closed in Mahora, those machines are lost in Mahora. Or if a premise closed in Flaxmere, those machines are lost in Flaxmere. How does it work?
Yeah, you come down, Rowan, and we'll mic you up there.
The policy is that the sinking lid applies across the district, so there's no relocation policy. So that's part of what is being notified as well. So the relocation policy is being withdrawn. It was in place, currently. So it would apply across the district.
Thank you.
All right. While you're there, Rowan, I mean, you've got your report here. Kevin's kind of covered. Did you want to highlight anything else in the report there?
Well, Kevin's done an admirable job. The only thing I would mention is the District Development Committee has brought a couple of items up to planning and bylaws for our consideration, and that's one of them is around the digital signboards. because the current performance standards in the plan are getting a little bit out of date, as you would all realise. The technology changes so quickly that the current performance standards are a little bit out of date. So that's something that we're going to take a look at. And the other one is around blank walls of the large format retail buildings around some of our main collector and arterial routes. That's another area of concern that they've brought to us, and the District Plan and Bylaw Committee will be looking at that.
All right, well, thank you, Kevin and Rowan. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Travis, seconded by Tanya. All those in favour, keep my eye. Any against? Carried. Thank you. We'll just move now to item number 9, Eco District Subcommittee report, and hand that over to the Chair, Anne.
No strategy as yet for eco districts, so we did have a workshop, our first workshop on the 13th of August, to commence discussions on potential areas of focus. So that was just a round table we had. We had 2 youth councillors attend, Matilda and Zoe. We also had one of the community members, Walter Brewstead, attended to present on the impacts of vehicles idling, which was very interesting, and the cost of that to our environment. We also had a presentation about wastewater heat transfer by Nick Meakin of Applied Energy. Applied Energy has a system which they've put into place in a number of cities around New Zealand and the world, and they're collecting heat from wastewater and transferring it to use in pool, to use to heat pools, to heat apartments, to heat housing complexes. So we're going to take that a little further, and that if we can get some funding from EECA, they'll do a heat map for us in the district to gauge viability, which I think is probably only going to cost us around $14,000 if we can get the funding, which is well worth having a go at. On July 24th, we met with Professor Bruce Clarkson, Belinda Slate from the Waikato University and the Hawke's Bay Biodiversity Chair and Manager to discuss urban biodiversity. We'll be having a full presentation from them as soon as it can be arranged. They have already got an MOU with Napier City Council and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council around that. So the other thing was they also would like, Hawke's Bay Biodiversity would also like to discuss significant natural areas, which is a very big subject for Hastings because of the size of our rohi. So yeah, it's just a starter really, or places that we could look at in isolation and just gradually work through. So that was interesting too. We also are going to have a workshop on efficient use of council water network, which is being planned to present the current status and planned improvements and further opportunities for consideration. Energy efficiency came through as a potential theme which the committee will have further discussions on. So we're really at our beginnings and trying to create or help Lex put together a strategy for us. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
If not, get a mover. Councillor Harvey move, seconded by Councillor Redstone. All those in favour, keep my eye. Aye. Any against? Carried. Thank you very much. It's just our last agenda item for this meeting is, well, I'll hand it over to Craig and can now talk to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take the paper as read. So the Chair and Deputy have asked me how we can get some formality and good record around our information flows to the senior committee from the subcommittees. And so you'll see in the paper I've just referenced our sort of responsibilities under the Local Government Act and Public Meetings Act. We do need to be transparent organisation and by that transparent to our community. And there will be times when it's appropriate for information, business information, to be recommended to be excluded, but the fundamental premise is that we're open and transparent. So for our day-to-day business, we have our internal information flows and posting of information on the hub and so forth, but I'm recommending an answer to the Chair and Deputy Chair's question to me that we do, for these senior meetings, have a written update report from the subcommittee, so that's a matter of public record. The public get to examine it 2 or 3 days before the meeting. The only record that the public have of a verbal update is to either come and sit here and listen to it, or of course if it's live stream they can go watch the video. The chairs have also asked me to consider how we get some consistency in the depth and of the information coming forward. So what I'm suggesting here is that in conjunction with the chairs that we develop a sort of a template or a framework to work to, and if the committee does decide that you prefer your chairperson's updates in future to be written, I'll make sure that there's sufficient staff administration support provided to the chairs to complete their reports. Thank you.
Any comments? No? Your Worship?
Oh, thank you. Through you, Chair. I totally support both the Chair and the Deputy Chair's suggestions. I think that's a very, very good way forward. Just one question to you, Mr. Cameron, is when will Eco District have its strategy?
We're working on it at the moment. I'm pushing the gentleman most skilled at it, Mr. Verhoeven, and we're just trying to balance it through with our LTP work. But I understand we're getting the skeleton of it together for the sufficient to a stage for the committee to start working from. So I'm hopeful certainly within the next month.
Thank you. Can I just say that, with the proposed changes to the RMA and the impacts on the environment, this committee is going to be hugely important for us going forward. People think it's a bit of a side committee, but actually it's going to be our future. And I think that, we really need to have a dedicated person, a champion, if you like, within the staff that actually helps us see the opportunities. And the regional council have got that, and they've been able to make some really good progress with the initiatives that they've brought forward. And we're going to have a workshop, aren't you, Anne, with the regional council to hear what those initiatives and ways in which we can work together and work and coexist together instead of treading on each other's toes. But I just think that there needs to be one person that actually looks after Eco District, understands its value, and understands the importance of making sure that we get some progress. We're nearly a year in. We'll be coming up a year in. The team want to be able to say that we've got all this housing coming in, and we've got, look at ways in which we can capture water, and help people and make our district more sustainable, and care for the environment and play our role. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Ritzer?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add, with a summary of considerations, there's not one about the environment, and nobody covers that in the papers. I think that's something that I'd love to see added to our summary of considerations.
Yeah, we'll add that on. We'll add that in there. All right. Go by. Recommendations on page 37 around this reporting framework for subcommittees. I'm happy to move from the chair, seconded by Councillor Kerr. All those in favour, give my eye. Aye. Any against? Motion carried. Thank you very much. So, thank you, everyone. That concludes our meeting. Councillor Kerr?
We will just adjourn this meeting, remember.
Adjourn the meeting? We're adjourning the meeting for now, and we will re-adjourn on Tuesday, Tuesday morning. So thank you everyone for your participation, your attendance and contributions today. We are going to have a short cup of tea break, and then there will be a couple of informals. Yeah, informal